My husband was cheating on Tinder and embezzling from our company for years. I made a fake profile and set up a date with him. I walked up to his table and said, "Hi, honey, is your new investor named Amanda?" They say betrayal in a marriage comes in 3 flavors: emotional, physical, and financial. My husband, Ethan, was about to hit the trifecta. When I stumbled upon that dating profile on his iPad, I didn't feel anger or sadness. I felt an opportunity crystallize. After 15 years of building our Austin-based cybersecurity firm together, I'd already gathered enough evidence of his professional betrayals to completely ruin him. This little rendezvous at a downtown restaurant? That would be the icing on the cake. The moment he'd finally understand that in the game he started, I was always several moves ahead. I've always been the type to plan every move meticulously. When I first met Ethan at a massive tech expo in Las Vegas 15 years ago, I calculated that this charming man, with his Ivy League MBA and a smile that was a little too easy, would be the perfect partner in life and in business. I needed his way with people. He needed my analytical mind. It seemed like a perfect equation, one that resulted in our marriage 6 months later and the founding of Apex Cyber Solutions right after. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize I was getting into business with a predator. We built the company from nothing, pulling 18-hour days in our rented loft in the South Congress District. He was out there, charming clients and securing deals, while I was coding and developing the most sophisticated digital security protocols on the market. In 5 years, we were a major player in Texas. In 10, we were the go-to cybersecurity firm in the country, with offices in 3 major cities and over 200 employees. Our photo even graced the cover of Inkier magazine, America's Tech Power Couple. If only they knew what was happening behind those perfectly rehearsed smiles. The truth is, for years, even I didn't fully know. Our mansion in Westlake Hills, one of Austin's most ridiculously expensive neighborhoods, overlooked the Texas Hill Country and had 5-bedroom suites. It was completely unnecessary for a childless couple, but Ethan insisted we had to project the image of our success. How ironic that the cavernous house became the perfect symbol of our marriage. Vast, empty spaces filled with designer furniture and the need to keep up appearances. We arrived home in separate cars, retreated to separate wings of the house, and put on a show for the staff. The love may have died years ago, but the business partnership was far too profitable to dissolve. Or so I thought. Elena is the brains, I'm the heart of the company. Ethan would repeat that line in every interview, at every corporate event, in every investor meeting. I would smile that practiced smile, wondering how he could sound so sincere delivering a line so scripted, but damn, it worked. Our dynamic was a marketable brand. I was the serious, analytical CFO, always in black, with a posture drilled into me by years of ballet as a child. He was the charismatic CEO, quick with a hug and an inspiring story, always in colorful suits with a booming laugh that filled any room. It was a corporate theater piece we performed daily, so well rehearsed that sometimes even I believed it. If you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have told you we had a functional marriage of convenience and a flawless business partnership. My mother used to say that marriage is a business like any other, and I truly believed I'd made an excellent deal. I had no idea I was being cheated twice over, as a wife and as a partner. But I've always had a knack for spotting anomalies in seemingly perfect systems. It's how I built my career, after all. And when the first cracks in our system began to appear, my professional instincts went on high alert long before my heart had a say in the matter. Have you ever had that feeling, that gut instinct, that something is deeply wrong, even when all the numbers on the surface seem to add up? The first red flag appeared during the quarterly audit I always conduct myself, a habit I've kept since we were just 3 people in a rented office space. I noticed a strange pattern of payments going to a consulting firm called Vanguard Strategies. The amounts were small enough not to trigger immediate alarms, $9,500 here, $8,000 there, always just under the $10,000 threshold that would require my direct sign-off. When I asked the finance department, they said they were Ethan's authorizations for strategic consulting. That was odd, considering he'd never once mentioned this firm in our weekly executive meetings. "Honey, they're just consultants helping me scope out our expansion into the Pacific Northwest," he explained when I confronted him, all while opening a bottle of that ridiculously expensive Napa Valley Cabernet he saved for special occasions. His tone was a little too casual, his smile a little too broad. I knew that smile. It was the same one he used when lying to clients about impossible deadlines he'd promised to meet. I didn't want to bog you down with the details while you were busy closing out the fiscal quarter. He poured me a glass, his eyes never quite meeting mine. I drank the wine and smiled back, but I felt a cold snap inside me. After 15 years, I knew Ethan's tells. He was lying. In the weeks that followed, I observed subtle shifts in his behavior. Board meetings he once commanded with infectious enthusiasm were now delegated to his subordinates. Business trips became more frequent and longer. Expanding our horizons, he'd say, with that signature wink that I once found charming but now found deeply infuriating. The most telling sign? Ethan, who had always been obsessed with his company phone, now carried a second device, a personal phone. And it was this phone that never left his side, not even when he went to the bathroom. Who in the cybersecurity business needs that level of digital privacy from their own partner? It was an offhand comment from a supplier that gave me the next piece of the puzzle. Alex, from Infracore Tech, mentioned casually over lunch, Ethan was really on fire at that dinner last night, talking about the potential partnership. I kept my expression perfectly neutral as I processed the information. What dinner? According to Ethan's official calendar, he was supposed to be at a tech summit in Denver. Dinner? I think you must have your dates mixed up, I replied calmly. Alex's face turned red as he realized his slip-up. Oh yeah, you're right. Must be mixing up my days. This business travel, you know how it is. I knew exactly how it was. A clumsy lie when caught off guard. The drive back to the Apex Cyber Solutions tower was a blur, but my mind was a clean room, sterile, focused, and processing data at high speed. The pieces of the puzzle weren't just falling into place. They were assembling themselves into a schematic of deep-seated betrayal. This was never just about a cheap affair, something I had suspected for years and, if I'm being honest, cared little about. We had been business partners far longer than we had been husband and wife. No, what truly captivated my analytical mind was the scent of something far more devastating: corporate treason. Ethan was running a rogue operation within our own company, something significant enough that he had to hide it from me, his co-founder and CFO. That night, I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I waited for the sound of his deep, even breathing from his wing of the house, and I went through his things. There was no pride in this act, only the cold, hard resolve of a CEO determined to uncover the truth, no matter how ugly it turned out to be. Hiring Valerie was my first strategic move after I found the hidden bank statements tucked into a false bottom of Ethan's desk drawer. A former FBI agent who now ran a high-end private investigation firm, she had a surgeon's precision and a level of discretion that was worth every penny of the $15,000 retainer I wired her. I'm not interested in the sordid details of his affairs unless they intersect with the business, I stated plainly during our meeting at a quiet, out-of-the-way coffee shop on South Lamar, far from Austin's tech world gossip circles. My focus is on suspicious financial movements, undocumented meetings, and anything that points to the misappropriation of company assets or intellectual property. Valerie just nodded, her sharp eyes taking it all in without writing a single note. Understood completely, Ms. Campos. This isn't my first rodeo. 3 weeks later, Valerie handed me a dossier that made my blood run cold. Vanguard Strategies, the shell company I'd flagged, was just the entry point. It was registered to a proxy, but its beneficial owner was a man named Derek Vance, one of Ethan's old fraternity brothers from his Wharton days. The payments I had discovered were merely the tip of the iceberg. The report detailed wire transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, clandestine meetings with our #1 competitor, and a consistent pattern of calls to a single number in Miami. It was when Valerie showed me the photo associated with that number, a woman in her early 30s holding the hand of a small boy around 5 years old, that I felt a strange shift inside me. It wasn't jealousy. It was more like the stunning, clarifying sting of a slap in the face. The boy's name is Mateo, Valerie explained in the same detached, professional tone I so admired. He was born 5 years and 7 months ago, The mother, Isabella Garcia, had a brief stint as an administrative assistant at the Apex Miami office 6 years ago. She was let go after 3 months, but has been receiving monthly deposits from one of the offshore accounts linked to Vanguard ever since. I looked at the picture again. The little boy had Ethan's eyes and that same dimple in his chin that I once found so charming. A son, a secret son he was supporting with money siphoned directly from our company. If it had only been that, perhaps I could have eventually moved past it. But the documents spread before me told a far more sinister story. $3 million. That was the total amount Ethan had embezzled over the past 3 years, according to Valerie's meticulous forensic accounting. Money that should have funded our West Coast expansion, paid bonuses to our dedicated employees, or even landed in my own accounts as an equal partner. He was careful, Valerie noted. Small, untraceable amounts, laundered over time through a web of ghost companies. It's a classic scheme, nearly impossible to detect without a targeted investigation. Nearly impossible for most, maybe. But I wasn't most people. I was Elena Campos, the woman who had personally architected the financial security protocols that protected major banks from this exact type of fraud. I spent the entire night in my home office, that third-floor sanctuary Ethan never entered. With a bottle of Cabernet and the ice-cold determination that had defined my entire career, I cross-referenced every document, every photo, every transaction, by 5 a.m. And as the first light began to touch the Texas Hill Country, I didn't just have proof of his betrayal. I had a complete battle plan. This wasn't going to be a messy public divorce that would tarnish the company's reputation and tank our stock value. It wouldn't be a quiet report to the authorities that would lead to a legal battle dragged out for years. My response would be something far more elegant, more definitive. It would be an attack worthy of my skills, a woman who built an empire by writing code and exploiting vulnerabilities. It was time to hack my own marriage. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place almost by accident during a corporate dinner at Jeffrey's, Austin's temple of fine dining, to celebrate landing a major new banking client. Ethan was particularly animated that night, buoyed by too many glasses of 18-year-old single malt scotch and a false sense of security. I watched his expansive gestures as he held court, charming the table with embellished stories of our company's early days. Elena and I started with just one computer and a whole lot of grit, he boomed, placing his hand over mine in a well-rehearsed display of affection. I smiled on cue, as I always did, but my eyes were locked on the iPad he'd left on the table when he excused himself to the restroom. I am not an impulsive woman. Even in that moment, I ran a rapid risk assessment. The iPad was unlocked. Ethan always got careless after his third drink. The rest of the table was distracted by the elaborate dessert being served. I picked up the device casually, as if to check a detail from our earlier presentation. My fingers flew across the screen with practiced precision, navigating to the specific folder Valerie's report had mentioned. Personal Ventures. Such an innocuous name for something so rotten. And there it was, a hidden folder containing not one, but 3 different dating apps, all with active profiles. Ethan, 45, entrepreneur, discreet, seeking uncomplicated connections. The bio on his main profile was blunt, almost transactional. The photos were recent, including one I'd taken myself on our last trip to Cabo, where I had been stuck in the hotel room with a migraine while he was supposedly networking on the beach. My stomach didn't lurch with pain, but with a glacial rage as I swiped over to his messages. There were dozens of active conversations, all following the same script. A charming opening, lies about being practically single, and dates set up for times that coincided perfectly with his so-called late-night work meetings. How had I never seen this before? Or was it that I simply didn't want to? Perhaps I was just too busy actually running the damn company while he was out playing games. I was so engrossed in the digital evidence of his double life that I barely noticed when he returned from the restroom and stood over me. I managed to lock the iPad and casually place it back on the table just seconds before he returned. "Everything okay, honey? You look a little pale," he asked, his voice dripping with a fake concern that was now utterly transparent to me. "Just tired," I replied, forcing a smile. "Maybe we should head home soon." He agreed instantly, ever the attentive husband in a public setting. As we said our goodbyes, my mind was already a supercomputer, processing this new data point and integrating it into the master plan that was rapidly taking shape. The infidelity was just one facet of the man I had shared a bed with for 15 years. The other, far more dangerous side, was that of a thief actively sabotaging the empire we had built together. On the drive home, in our separate cars, as always, a message from Valerie delivered the final payload. Located the Cayman account documents. Regular wire transfers confirmed for the last 18 months. Total amount matches your estimate. Also found emails discussing the potential sale of proprietary code to a competitor. I stopped at a red light on Congress Avenue, and a strange, profound calm washed over me. I finally had every piece of the puzzle. Ethan wasn't just cheating on me with countless women while supporting a secret child. He was methodically planning to cut me out of the company, likely with a scheme designed to frame me, all while selling our trade secrets to the highest bidder. The betrayal was absolute, as a wife, as a partner, and as the architect of the very business he was bleeding dry. In that moment, something inside me died, perhaps the last shred of affection I ever had for him. And something new was born in its place, an ice-cold resolve that would rewrite our entire history. The next morning, I was awake before my alarm, a lifelong habit. Ethan was still asleep in his wing of the house. For years, we'd maintained separate suites under the guise of not disturbing each other's schedules, an excuse that now seemed laughably convenient for his nocturnal activities. I sipped my coffee on the terrace, watching the sun rise over the hill country, as I mentally storyboarded the coming moves. This would not be an impulsive, emotional attack. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but mine wouldn't just be cold. It would be cryogenically frozen, meticulously engineered, and as inevitable as an algorithm running its final command. First, I needed to quantify the financial damage with absolute precision. The entire morning was spent locked in my home office, phone off, as I forensically analyzed every transaction over the past 3 years. I cross-referenced data sets, audited wire transfers, and identified anomalies that only I, the system's creator, could ever recognize. The final number made me choke on my now cold coffee. $3,247,192.53, over $3 million, enough to have funded our entire West Coast expansion, or to have given every single one of our employees a 15% raise, or so many legitimate business possibilities that Ethan had sacrificed at the altar of his ego and his secret bank account. The anger I felt wasn't a hot flare of rage, it was a cool, calculated fury, like the decisive click of a button confirming a massive, irreversible transaction. "Elena, you okay? You've been MIA all day." Ethan's voice startled me as he walked into the kitchen around 7 p.m. while I was making chamomile tea. His concerned tone was so authentic that, for a split second, I almost questioned the mountain of evidence I had compiled. Almost. "Just a busy day. I'm reviewing our tax strategy for the next quarter," I replied nonchalantly. He came up behind me, placing his hands on my shoulders in a gesture that was once intimate but now made my skin crawl. "You work too hard. We should take a real vacation, just the two of us. How about the Maldives?" I smiled at the wall in front of me, wondering if Vanguard Strategies would be footing the bill for that trip too. Perhaps. Let's see how things are after we close the deal with the Department of Defense. Over the next week, I assembled my secret war room, choosing my assets with the precision of a chess grandmaster. Kevin, the new junior accountant Ethan had hired against my advice, I now understood he wanted someone malleable, turned out to be surprisingly principled when I approached him discreetly. "Ms. Campos, I did notice some irregularities, but I wasn't sure who to report them to. Mr. Ethan, he can be intimidating." I saw the genuine fear in his eyes. Perfect, not his fear, but the honesty it produced. Next was Jessica, Ethan's executive assistant of 5 years. She agreed to cooperate after I casually mentioned my awareness of the HR incident Ethan had buried with a generous raise and an NDA. Dr. Miller, our corporate counsel, was the toughest to sway, but he folded when I presented him with evidence that could expose him to disbarment for gross professional negligence. With my pieces in position, the game was afoot. My plan unfolded under the perfect camouflage of our daily routine. I sat in board meetings, smiling at Ethan's tired jokes. We attended charity galas hand in hand, the very picture of the American tech power couple. We even spent a weekend at our ranch in Fredericksburg, where I read a novel on the porch while he was likely sexting his latest conquests. Normalcy was my greatest weapon. Beneath it, every action was a calculated strike. Key documents were being scanned, offshore bank records were being secured, and quiet, off-the-record affidavits were being collected from key employees. Slowly, almost invisibly, I was executing a series of legal maneuvers to transfer controlling interest of our shares to my personal holding company using a complex trust structure I'd created years ago as a doomsday contingency. Ethan had never cared for the fine print of corporate law. His arrogance was about to be his undoing. And now, all that remained was the final, devastating move in my marital endgame. Amanda. The profile for Amanda Reed was born on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, while Ethan was away at a strategic offsite in Dallas, which, according to Valerie, was actually a weekend with a model at the Ritz-Carlton. I used an AI image generator to create a woman who didn't exist, feeding it a composite of the physical traits of the last 5 women he'd been involved with, per Valerie's detailed report. Brunette, green eyes, 32 years old, with a smile that was warm but not naive. In her profile picture, Amanda wore an elegant but understated blue dress, angled to suggest a blend of class and a hint of mystery. She was precisely the type of woman Ethan believed he deserved, beautiful, seemingly sophisticated, and, he would assume, easily impressed. I wrote Amanda's biography with the care of a novelist crafting a protagonist. She was a corporate attorney specializing in mergers and acquisitions, newly relocated to Austin after 5 years in London, and didn't know many people in town yet. Divorced, no kids. Her interests, Pinot Noir, Russian literature, and classic jazz. These details weren't random. They were pure, unadulterated bait, custom designed for my prey. Ethan always boasted about his sophisticated palate for wine, though I knew for a fact he couldn't tell a Napa Cabernet from a cheap Merlot in a blind taste test. He'd feign a deep appreciation for Dostoevsky, but only after I once mentioned I admired Crime and Punishment. And his jazz collection? A set of pristine, unplayed vinyl records that served as nothing more than office decor. Amanda was engineered to be the perfect mirror of the man he pretended to be. The first contact came faster than even I anticipated. A mere 2 hours after her profile went live, the message popped up on the burner phone I'd acquired for this operation. An attorney who appreciates Dostoevsky? A rare find these days. Ethan, a pleasure. It was so textbook, so utterly predictable, I almost laughed at the screen. I waited hours to reply, crafting every word to project interest without desperation, intelligence without intimidation. Over the following days, our conversation unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Amanda was attentive, asking insightful questions about his career and showering him with subtle admiration for his achievements. All the while, the real me, Elena, sat across the breakfast table from him, watching him sneak glances at his phone with that smug little half-smile I now recognized as his hunting face. What must it be like to be so confident in your own deception? I'm not usually like this, Amanda wrote on day 5. I'm typically much more guarded with men I meet online, but there's something about you that feels so trustworthy. I watched Ethan read the message, his grin widening as he typed his reply. 15 years we'd been married, and he still operated under the delusion that he could hide anything from me. I feel the same, he typed back. This connection is different. Maybe it's destiny. Destiny. The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. If he only knew that every one of Amanda's responses was generated from a psychological profile I had been compiling for over a decade. Every compliment, every coincidental shared interest, every perfectly timed admission of vulnerability. It was all designed to trigger his savior and predator complexes simultaneously. After 3 weeks of daily escalating intimacy, the trap was set. Amanda had become his digital confidant. She was the one he complained to about the pressures of work and family obligations, a clever euphemism for the wife he never once mentioned. He'd shared business anxieties, emotional weaknesses, even the sob story about his absent father, a tale I knew by heart but which Amanda received as a profound, intimate revelation. The operation was proceeding exactly as my projections indicated, with Ethan becoming more deeply enmeshed in this fantasy relationship by the hour. His predictability was, frankly, disappointing. Then, in the third week, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. "Amanda, I have to meet you in person. This is too special to keep virtual." The bait had been taken. Now, it was time to set the hook. While Amanda was expertly conquering Ethan's heart, I was silently executing a corporate coup at Apex Cyber Solutions. The first move was to finalize the transfer of controlling interest into my personal holding company, a complex process we'd initiated years ago for asset protection, but whose legal intricacies Ethan had never bothered to learn. All it took were a few new clauses slipped into routine quarterly filings that he signed without a second glance. "It's just boring tax bureaucracy, honey," I'd say, and he would scribble his signature, eager to get back to the phone where Amanda was likely waiting. Arrogance was always his greatest vulnerability. He never imagined that I, the boring numbers cruncher, could outplay him at his own game of manipulation. Kevin, the junior accountant, proved indispensable during this phase. After I showed him the sheer scale of Ethan's embezzlement, his initial reluctance evaporated. "This could destroy my career if an external audit ever uncovers it," he said, his face pale as he scanned the offshore transfer logs. "I'm only asking you to do your job, Kevin. Document everything, follow legal protocols to the letter, and be available as a witness when the time comes." He nodded, relieved that there was a legitimate, albeit terrifying, path forward. I didn't mention that this path also paved the way for my personal vindication. Some motivations are best kept private. The negotiations with our top competitor, Omnisec Solutions, required a more delicate touch. I arranged a clandestine meeting with their CEO, Mark Peterson, at a private club in Chicago. "Why is the CFO of Apex meeting me without her husband's knowledge?" he asked, his suspicion palpable, though his curiosity was clearly piqued. "Because I'm about to make you an offer that will reshape the entire cybersecurity landscape," I replied calmly, sliding a portfolio across the table. Inside was a proposal for a partial merger, with terms that were shockingly favorable to Omnisec. "This is unorthodox," he said after a long silence, his eyes scanning the documents. "And your husband. Ethan will no longer be with the company when this is implemented," I cut in. "And I should add, he's been having his own conversations with your firm for all the wrong reasons." I then presented the evidence of Ethan's attempts to sell them our proprietary code. Peterson's face hardened. Even among corporate sharks, there's a code, and Ethan had broken it. Dr. Miller, our corporate counsel of 10 years, was the final piece. His loyalty was frayed, having been a confidant to Ethan for years. Our meeting was in his high-rise office after hours. "What I'm about to show you is confidential and potentially ruinous for everyone," I began, laying out the irrefutable proof of embezzlement. Dr. Miller adjusted his glasses, his expression growing more grim with each page. "Elena, this is incredibly serious. We have a fiduciary duty to report this." "And we will," I interrupted, "but we will do it my way, on my timeline. The alternative is a public scandal that will bankrupt the company, destroy the jobs of 200 employees, and end your career for failing to detect years of executive fraud under your watch." He stared at me, the crossroads I'd laid before him perfectly clear. "What exactly do you need from me?" he finally asked. "Your presence at a dinner? As a witness? Nothing more, nothing less." The last step was to secure the kingdom's data. One night, while Ethan was on a business trip, which Valerie confirmed was a weekend in Miami with a fitness influencer, I used my master admin credentials to access the company's central server. I created a ghost image of everything, every email, every contract, every line of proprietary code, and every financial record, and secured it on an isolated encrypted drive. My arsenal was now complete. Information isn't just power, it's leverage. I wasn't about to let Ethan burn down the kingdom we built if he got a whiff that he was being cornered. I worked through the night, methodically organizing what would become my digital insurance policy. As dawn broke, I sent a single text to Jessica. "Confirm the restaurant for Friday. Private room, as discussed." Her reply was instantaneous, even at 5:30 a.m. The Driscoll grill is confirmed. Table reserved under his name, per your request. The board was set. The pieces were in place. All that was left was to announce checkmate. Jessica, Ethan's own executive assistant, was my most surprising and invaluable asset. I had always viewed her as a simple extension of him, efficient, quiet, and perpetually at his beck and call. What I failed to see, in my own insulated world, was the silent resentment she had nurtured for years. He called me into a private meeting 6 months after I started, she revealed during our clandestine lunch at a cafe far from the downtown tech corridor. When I shut down his advances, he started to subtly sabotage my work. Reports would go missing, his calendar would get confused. Then came the ultimatum, play along or get fired. I took the pay raise as hush money. Her expression was a mask of professional calm, but the white-knuckled grip on her napkin told the real story. "Why did you stay?" I asked. A humorless smile touched her lips. "Because I promised myself I'd be there the day he finally got what he deserved. It seems that day has arrived." Kevin, the accountant, was her polar opposite, a bundle of nerves, constantly adjusting his glasses as we reviewed the documents that formed the backbone of our case. "Ms. Campos, if this goes wrong, we could all be facing criminal liability," he whispered, poring over the embezzlement spreadsheets for the 10th time. "Which is precisely why it won't go wrong, Kevin," I replied, my own calmness seeming to steady him. "You aren't doing anything illegal. You are simply documenting the financial irregularities you discovered while performing your professional duties." He nodded, still nervous, but with a new glimmer of resolve in his eyes. There was a certain freedom in finally doing the right thing, even if it was terrifying. I realized then that Kevin wasn't a coward. He had just been steamrolled by men like Ethan his entire life. Dr. Miller, our lawyer, stunned me with his transformation after our initial meeting. He went from a reluctant bystander to an engaged strategist, proactively identifying legal pitfalls and proposing solutions. "If we frame this as a necessary corporate intervention rather than a marital ambush, our legal standing is fortified," he advised during a secret meeting in the rarely used basement conference room. "Mr. Campos has violated at least 7 clauses of the corporate bylaws, not to mention the potential federal wire fraud charges." I noted he now referred to Ethan formally, as if the personal connection had already been severed. "I always had my suspicions, you know," he confessed. "Documents vanishing, contracts altered after my review. But I never had hard proof. And confronting a CEO without it is professional suicide." I nodded, recognizing in him the dilemma so many face, the choice between ethics and survival. My most unexpected ally, however, was Cecilia, Ethan's own mother. Our relationship had always been polite but distant, defined by superficial Sunday dinners and her veiled criticisms. When I invited her for tea in my private office, she was intrigued. "After 15 years, this is the first time we've ever spoken alone, Elena," she remarked, impeccably elegant in her St. John knit suit and ever-present pearls. I was direct. "Cecilia, I have discovered some things about Ethan that are going to change everything." I braced for denial, for a mother's defense, perhaps even for anger. Instead, she let out a long, weary sigh. "Finally," she said, catching me completely off guard. "I've known this day would come since he was 12 and skimming money from his allowance to bribe kids in his class. My son has his father's character, charming, brilliant, and utterly devoid of a moral compass." Her eyes met mine with a painful clarity. "What do you need me to do?" Not all allies needed to be in the war room. Sam, our driver for the past 8 years, provided crucial intel without even knowing it. His casual stories about where he drove Ethan, comments about the young woman he always picked up from that condo on Rainy Street or that weird office building we went to every Thursday, formed a damning mosaic when cross-referenced with Ethan's official calendar. A handful of unjustly fired ex-employees were also eager to contribute, offering up their own pieces of the puzzle. Suspicious meetings they witnessed, strange requests they fulfilled. Every tip was meticulously verified, documented, and absorbed into the ever-growing dossier. The web I was weaving wasn't just for personal revenge. It was a quiet uprising of people who were tired of being used and discarded by a man who believed he was untouchable. And as Amanda was texting sweet nothings to Ethan, I was orchestrating the most important hostile takeover of my life, with an unlikely team united by a single goal: justice, or something very close to it. Friday dawned with a fine, misty drizzle, the kind that often hangs over Austin in the winter and would normally annoy me for what it did to my hair. But on this morning, every detail felt hyper-vivid. The rich aroma of the coffee our housekeeper, Maria, had brewed, the distant sound of Ethan humming in the shower, the way the raindrops raced each other down my bedroom window. I studied my reflection in the mirror as I applied my lipstick, not my usual discreet corporate shade, but a bold, defiant red. A statement. "Today is a special day," I told the woman, looking back at me. There was no fear in her eyes, only a cold fire that had perhaps always been there, waiting for this moment. Ethan was practically giddy at breakfast, compulsively checking his phone between sips of coffee and bites of his toast. "Big day today," he commented, the lie rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. "That big negotiation with the Silicon Valley VCs is finally coming to a head." I just nodded, feigning interest. There were no Silicon Valley VCs. There was only a 8 p.m. dinner reservation with Amanda at the Driscoll Grill. "Don't wait up for me," he continued. "We'll probably go out for drinks after the meeting. You know how these guys are." "You know how these guys are, always wanting to soak up the local vibe." I smiled, the picture of a supportive wife. "Of course, darling. Have fun." Little did he know, I had a reservation of my own at the Driscoll Grill for the exact same time. The final mission briefing took place at 3 p.m. over a secure video call with my 3 key co-conspirators. "Kevin, you and Dr. Miller are to arrive separately, at least 30 minutes before him. Get separate tables, distant from each other, but with a clear line of sight to the central table reserved under Ethan's name." The accountant nodded nervously, his glasses slipping down his sweaty nose. Dr. Miller, ever the professional, maintained his stoic composure while making meticulous notes. "Jessica, confirm that all the evidence is organized in the correct portfolios." She briefly held up 3 color-coded folders, each containing specific proof and the legal documents Ethan would be forced to sign. "And the originals of the asset transfer agreements?" I asked. Dr. Miller held up a sleek black portfolio. "Right here, Elena. Filed, notarized, and ready for his signature." At 7 p.m., my transformation began. This was not the frantic beauty ritual of a woman desperate to impress a lover. It was the calculated preparation of a general dressing for battle. I chose the black Valentino dress I had purchased for this very night. Elegant, powerful, with a cut that commanded respect without screaming for attention. The Louboutin heels, whose signature red soles would make my every step sound more decisive. The Chanel fragrance I wore only for occasions that demanded absolute, unshakable confidence. My hair was pulled back into a severe, immaculate chignon. The makeup was flawless, but understated, with the singular exception of the bold red lipstick that now felt less like a cosmetic and more like war paint. This wasn't vanity. It was armor. For what I was about to do, I needed to feel invincible. As I fastened the pearl necklace that had belonged to my grandmother, a family heirloom passed down through generations of strong women, I realized I had never felt more powerful, more lucid, more myself. A final text was sent from Amanda to Ethan. "Can't wait to see you. I'll be in blue, as we discussed." A smirk touched my lips before I slipped the burner phone into the Hermes clutch that perfectly completed my avenging angel aesthetic. When my car pulled up to the Driscoll minutes after 8 p.m., I knew my timing was perfect. Ethan's Porsche was already in the valet line. Inside, as they would later recount, Kevin and Dr. Miller were already in position. I took one deep, steadying breath before stepping out, not a breath of nervousness, but one of pure, delicious anticipation. The hostess recognized me immediately. We were regulars, after all. "Good evening, Ms. Campos. Mr. Campos has already arrived. Your usual table?" I gave a slight shake of my head. "Not tonight. I'm going to surprise him." The young man looked momentarily confused, then gave a knowing smile. "Of course. Celebrating something special?" I allowed myself a small, cryptic smile. Something like that. Walking through the hushed, elegant dining room, I could feel the eyes on me. I always commanded a certain amount of attention. even in a room filled with Austin's elite. But tonight was different. Perhaps it was the posture, the purpose in my stride, or simply the unmistakable aura of a queen about to retake her throne. 15 years of work, of sacrifice, of quiet endurance, it would all culminate in the next 15 minutes. And there he was, anxiously checking his watch, a bouquet of white lilies on the table, my favorite flower. The irony was sickening, utterly oblivious to the hurricane that was bearing down on him. Ethan looked almost boyish, adjusting the bow tie he rarely wore unless he was trying to make a big impression. I watched him for a moment from across the room, studying his tells like a predator observing its prey. He checked his phone for the third time in as many minutes, no doubt looking for a message from Amanda. With cold precision, I pulled out the burner phone and typed, "Where are you? I'm getting excited." I saw his face light up as he read it, his thumbs flying across the screen. "I'm here, table by the window. Can't wait to finally meet you." I put the phone away and gave a subtle nod to Dr. Miller, who acknowledged it with an almost imperceptible dip of his head. It was time. I walked toward his table with a steady, measured pace, locking eyes with him the moment he looked up. It took every ounce of my self-control not to laugh at the cascade of emotions that flooded his face. First, utter confusion. He was clearly expecting a brunette in a blue dress, which was quickly replaced by pure shock, followed by a pathetic scramble for composure. "Elena? What are you doing here?" His voice was a full octave higher than usual, his hands instinctively covering his phone. "Hi, darling," I replied coolly, taking the seat opposite him. "Waiting for someone." His eyes darted from the lilies on the table to the restaurant's entrance, as if he still expected Amanda to walk in and clear up some hilarious misunderstanding. I have a business meeting with those investors from California. I told you this morning. Is your investor named Amanda by any chance?" I asked, placing my own phone on the table between us. The dating app conversation left open for him to see. The color drained from Ethan's face. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Seeing this master manipulator, this man of 1,000 words, rendered completely speechless, was almost comical. "I can explain," he finally stammered, adopting the placating tone that must have worked wonders on the other women he'd been caught lying to. "It's not what it looks like." A small, cruel smile played on my lips. "Isn't it? So it's not you on 3 different dating apps? And it's not you setting up dates while telling your wife you're in meetings? Perhaps it's also not you who has been embezzling millions from our company for the past 3 years? Or the father of a secret child in Miami?" With each question, his eyes grew wider. "How did you—" The words died on his lips as I placed a small black flash drive on the table. This was plugged into the company's main server last night. For a cybersecurity expert, you leave a remarkably messy digital trail. Ethan stared at the flash drive as if it were a venomous snake. "On this drive," I continued, my voice low and steady, "is the evidence of your affair with Isabella Garcia 6 years ago. It also contains a full accounting of the $3 million you siphoned through Vanguard Strategies and your email correspondence with OmniSec, offering to sell them our proprietary code." I paused, letting the weight of it all sink in as sweat beaded on his forehead. "Oh, and there are also the detailed wire transfer records for the monthly support payments for Mateo, your 5-year-old son. Funny you never mentioned you were a father. You can't possibly believe everything you find online," he bluffed, his voice laced with a panic he was failing to conceal. "Those could be deep fakes, doctored files. You of all people know how easy it is to forge." I cut him off with a single dismissive gesture, having anticipated this pathetic line of defense. "Which is precisely why I brought witnesses." With a subtle tilt of my head, I indicated Kevin and Dr. Miller, who were now openly watching our table. "Our accountant discovered the financial discrepancies months ago. Our corporate counsel has personally verified every document. Both are legally mandated to report felony-level fraud. Unless—" I let the word hang in the air, savoring the precise moment he grasped the full, horrifying scope of the trap. "Unless what?" Ethan's voice was a strangled whisper. His eyes darted between my face, the flash drive, and the 2 men who had become the jury for his life's work. I saw the final circuit break in his mind, the slight twitch at the corner of his left eye, a tell I had only witnessed twice in 15 years, both times when he was truly, irrevocably cornered. Unless the guilty party steps forward, accepts full responsibility, and makes the appropriate reparations, I said, my tone as placid as if I were discussing the wine list. With a discreet signal, Jessica, who had been waiting by the bar, approached our table carrying an elegant black leather portfolio. "This won't work, Elena," Ethan tried, attempting to summon his old bravado. He straightened his tie, forcing the charming smile that had opened so many doors for him. "I am the face of Apex. I'm the one on the magazine covers, the one who closes the billion-dollar deals. The clients trust me. The one who stole millions from his own company." I finished for him, my voice soft but sharp. "The one caught trying to sell trade secrets to a competitor? How do you think that headline will look on the cover of the Wall Street Journal?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Jessica placed the portfolio on the table and retreated without a word. "What is this?" he asked, refusing to touch it as if it were radioactive. "Your graceful exit," I replied, opening it to reveal 2 documents. The first is your immediate and formal resignation as CEO and chairman of the board of Apex Cyber Solutions, citing personal reasons. The second is our divorce settlement, with all assets pre-divided. I slid the papers toward him. "You'll notice I'm being generous. You get to keep the ranch in Fredericksburg, the condo in Aspen, and a severance that will allow you to maintain your lifestyle for a time. In return, you relinquish all claims to Apex and sign a non-compete clause for the entire cybersecurity sector in perpetuity." I paused, letting it sink in. "Oh, and you will, of course, continue to meet your financial obligations to your son in Miami." "I'm not a monster." Ethan stared at the documents, then back at me, his mind racing, searching for an escape hatch, a loophole. "And if I don't sign?" The question was a challenge, a final flicker of the arrogant man I once knew. My face remained a mask of calm indifference. I reached into my clutch, retrieved a simple white business card, and slid it across the table. Then at 9 a.m. on Monday, a special agent in the FBI's white-collar crime division receives this entire dossier. At 10 a.m., an emergency board meeting is convened where Kevin and Dr. Miller will present their findings. By noon, the SEC will be notified, and our key clients will be alerted to an internal administrative crisis. And by 3 p.m., if you haven't already been arrested, you'll be served with a lawsuit for fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. For a long moment, the world seemed to shrink to the space between us. I could practically see the gears grinding behind those eyes I once found so captivating as he searched for an angle, a weakness in my plan, a way to talk his way out of it as he always had. But there was none. I watched, with a kind of clinical fascination, as his entire world collapsed, his defenses crumbling like a firewall under a brute force attack. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow, stripped of all its practiced confidence. "You planned all of this. Amanda, that was you. The whole time." It wasn't a question, but I answered it anyway. "Every word, every message, every empty promise. It's ironic, isn't it? Being taken down by your own playbook." When the tip of his Mont Blanc pen touched the paper, the very same pen I gave him for our 10th wedding anniversary, I felt a strange cocktail of triumph and emptiness. He signed both documents with the mechanical movements of a defeated man, his hands shaking just enough to betray the storm raging inside him. "Dr. Bao." Miller approached the table to notarize the signatures. His role as a legal witness performed with the same quiet efficiency he brought to every Apex contract. Kevin remained at a distance, his relief palpable. "So, what now?" Ethan asked, his voice a ghost of its former self. The man who always had a plan B was utterly adrift. "Now," I said, my voice even. "You can finish your dinner if you like. You'll pay the bill, making a show of the generous tip you always leave. And then you will go home and pack a bag." I watched him absorb the instructions. "Tomorrow morning, Jessica will circulate an internal memo announcing your sudden departure. On Monday, I will take over as interim CEO, a move the board has already provisionally approved." He looked at me, a flicker of something, was it disbelief or grudging respect, in his eyes. He was finally seeing the boring numbers cruncher for who she really was. "You can't just erase 15 years, he whispered, a last pathetic appeal. We built that company from nothing. We went through everything together. You'd throw all that history away over a few mistakes? I let out a short, sharp laugh, the first genuine emotion I'd shown all night. Mistakes? Is that what you call embezzling $3 million? Fathering a secret child? Actively planning to sell out the company we built? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. No, Ethan, those aren't mistakes. Those are choices. And now you get to live with yours. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that only he could hear. You think I threw 15 years away tonight? No. You threw them away long before I ever found out. Every lie, every affair, every stolen dollar was another nail you hammered into the coffin of what we built. I simply had the decency to arrange a proper funeral. Ethan looked like he had aged a decade in a single evening. His broad shoulders slumped under the crushing weight of a consequence he never thought he'd have to face. For a man who had built his life on the assumption that he could charm and manipulate his way out of any problem, this cold, hard reality must have felt like a glitch in the universe. Can I at least know when? He asked. When did you figure it out? When did you start planning? All this? There was a genuine, almost academic curiosity in his voice, the sound of a failed mastermind trying to reverse engineer his own downfall. The first anomaly was 6 months ago, with the Vanguard transactions, but the real proof, the moment I knew for sure, that was when you left your iPad unlocked at our dinner at Jeffrey's. Fatally careless, for a man so meticulous about his betrayals. I took a final sip of the Chardonnay I'd ordered upon arrival, a glass of Montrachet that cost more than a monthly mortgage payment, and set the glass down with a soft click. It was time to end the performance before it devolved into melodrama. The documents you signed are legally binding. Dr. Miller will file everything first thing in the morning. I stood, smoothing the front of my dress. Your office keys and all access badges are to be left with Jessica by Monday morning. Your personal effects will be boxed up and sent to whichever address you provide. I picked up my clutch and the flash drive from the table. Then, almost as an afterthought, I reached for the bouquet of lilies he had brought for his date. And I'll be taking these. You always remembered that lilies were my favorite, didn't you? At least you got one thing right. A shame they were for Amanda. I plucked a single perfect white lily from the bouquet and gently tucked it into the lapel of his suit jacket, adjusting it as if preparing him for a photograph. Consider it a parting gift. Something to remember that even in the smallest details, darling, I was always watching. The sweet, heavy fragrance of the flower hung in the air between us, a silent witness to the end of everything. A bouquet intended for a new conquest had just become the funeral arrangement for a marriage, a career, and a reputation. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could feel the ripple of speculation in my wake. The Driscoll Grill is a fishbowl for Austin's tech and political elite. Many in the room knew us, and some had surely witnessed the bizarre, silent tableau that had just unfolded. I could almost hear the whispers that would ignite the second the door closed behind me, the theories about what could possibly shatter the unflappable Ethan Campos. Soon, when the news of his sudden resignation from Apex hit the wires, the rumors would become legend. But that didn't matter. In the world of corporate chess, it doesn't matter what the spectators think of your strategy. The only thing that counts is the final result. And I had just delivered a checkmate as elegant as it was absolute. In the car, I finally let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 6 months. It wasn't relief, not exactly, nor was it satisfaction. It was something more elemental, the quiet hum of a complex system being restored to its proper balance after a critical error had been purged. I took out my phone and sent a single encrypted message to Valerie. It's done. Wire transfer initiated. I started the engine and watched the warm glow of the restaurant in my rearview mirror for a moment. Inside, a man was staring at the wreckage of the life he had so carelessly built, trying to understand how his quiet, predictable wife had architected his downfall so perfectly. A small smile played on my lips as I accelerated into the night, toward a future that was now mine and mine alone. Some people are content to play the game by the rules they're given. And others? Others build the board, write the rules, and decide who gets to play at all. I have always preferred to be the architect.